Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art, a show that looks at the creative process by inviting artists to join us in a conversation about their life and their work. My name is David Schrader, and with me, as always, is my co host, Linda Scheller. Come on in, Linda. Hi there.
Hi, how are you, David?
Welcome. It's been a while. We've kind of taken the early part of the summer off, so it's
hmm
good to see you again. You've been working on lots of poetry and doing some theater yourself. Is that?
Well, I taught a poetry writing workshop yesterday through
Yeah,
Modesto Stanislaus Poetry Center at the library, and that was great fun.
yeah.
Just volunteering at the Prospect, nothing where I'm actually performing,
Uh,
however, writing lots.
Writing. Okay, yeah. Because you mentioned Prospect Theater a lot, and I thought, oh well, maybe she's back on stage again or something like that. So anyway, let's get on with the show. Today is a special guest, special because well, I've known him for quite a few years. Roy Stevens. I don't know. You know who he is. I don't know if you've had any much interaction with him or did any work with him.
I've not had the pleasure of working with him, but we're acquainted, and I think
Yeah,
highly of what he and his family have done. I'm really grateful for their presence in the Modesto area.
yeah. Well, I call him a special guest because he's fulfilled many roles in his life as an opera singer, and well, he's a hometown boy. He left here, he became an international opera singer, um, and then came back home again. Uh, Before he left, he was part of what I call a cauldron of talent that was here in Modesto that included a large number of people who went on to successful careers nationally and internationally. So, he's kind of like a mythical character in my head in some ways, because he's part of this group that has made Modesto and Stanislaus County special. So, without going on anymore in this kind of strange direction, why don't we just bring him on and just have a normal conversation with him? So, come on in, Roy.
Hello, everyone. Hi, David.
There
Hi,
you are.
Linda.
There
Welcome,
you
Roy.
are.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you've had a busy, busy life and a wonderful life and a creative life. So,
Yes.
yeah.
It's been a rather unexpectedly busy and creative life. I thought I was going to be a doctor or a teacher, and I certainly have been a teacher, but I missed the doctor part, except on stage.
Really? Wow.
I was all science math when I graduated from Modesto High School in 1975, and our graduating motto was Jive in 75, I'm sorry to say. I was the outstanding math and science and music student graduate, but I was not really all that hot at music, but I was good at math and science.
Wow. No wonder we get along. That was mine when I was your
Gee,
age. Yeah, it was math and science. That was, how did I end
whoa,
up? Yeah.
I'm the black sheep here.
the, the true,
English and languages.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, with a math and science background, um, what led you to the stage?
Well, I'm really fortunate to be part of a wonderful family that included music of all kinds in our growing up. We always had the Heathkit home built stereo record player going, and lots of musical theater and opera and other kind of music playing all the time. And we had a piano. My dad used to play the piano. We all sang. We also did something quite amazing, which I don't think could happen now. My parents ran what was called the Ken Stevens Teenage Adventures, and they they owned somehow as many as 9 VW buses at a time, used
Wow.
ones, yeah, that they bought from
Gee,
Diet Eichel's VW dealership on McHenry. And those were all the 50s and 60s models. The 50s models that would max out at 52 miles an hour, but could go over anything. And so we took these trips to Baja California, Mexico, and Canada with teenagers and camping and dancing and singing. So I grew up on the road all of my holidays with the Ken Stevens Teenage Adventures and singing around the
Wow.
campfire and stuff. So singing was just part of my life, although I wasn't particularly gifted at it. So I'm the youngest of 6 kids. I have 5 wonderful older siblings. 4 of them are females who made my life miserable. That's my joke. That's my joke about them. They actually didn't, but they tried to. They did things like dress me up as a little girl in girls' clothes, and they made up languages that they didn't understand either, so I would be excluded. But in truth, they were delightful and wonderful and have remained incredibly supportive all through my life of me becoming a performer. I also have an older brother who should have had a wonderful singing career, but he chose to become a mechanical engineer, and he's continued to love music all through his life. So my oldest brother, my next to oldest sibling, Patrick, or Pat Stevens, when he was at Modesto High School, at that time there were 3 of them at Modesto High School. Pat or Patrick, Sue Stevens became Sue Flores, and Joy Stevens Mercier. And then there were 2 younger ones, Jenny Stevens Garrison and myself. So, David, if you pull up the picture of that production of King and I from 1964, the entire family, with the exception of my oldest sister, that one, there you go. That is a Modesto High School production of King and I in 1964. And I was the second to youngest little kid. And this was led by Ginger Covert, then became Ginger Cola, who passed away recently. Such a wonderful conductor. She had just begun her choir directing experience there at Modesto High School, just out of school. And we all adored her. And this was an incredible production. 5 of the 6 kids in my family were in it, including me. So, David, move on to that picture right below it with me.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. That is a picture of me. I'm the cute one on my right, and the other one is my sister Jenny. So we were 2 of the kids of the part of the King's harem or whatever of the King and I. So that was my first time on stage. I was in 1st grade, and as you can see, I was delighted about it.
Yes.
I wore my costume and makeup and black hair to 1st grade at Paradise Elementary School for show and tell, and sang "Getting to Know You, Getting to Know All About You." And that was it until a few years later when Paul Tischer founded Modesto Youth Theater, now Modesto Performing Arts. So I think he founded it in 1968 or so. If you go to the next picture, David, you'll see me in one of the shows I did there. This is Sound of Music. I'm the tall boy on the back left, and I was playing Friedrich in Sound of Music. So I did 14 musicals over a number of years, from the time I was 11 or 12 until I was in college with Modesto Youth Theater, just for fun. In those days, it was only people under junior college age or through junior college. Go to the next one, David. And the next one is
Is this it? No, wait a minute. Something's going on here.
Okay, so while I'm here with Sound of Music, this was the year I became a freshman in high school at Modesto High School, and we did something like 20 performances for schools that were bused into Modesto High School in the first couple weeks of my first year at high school. Now this is King and I was growing up now, and I was Crown Prince Chaufa Chulalongkorn.
Love the name.
That was fun. And go to the next one, David. That's the last one of the Modesto Youth photos. I got to be in all these great shows. So that's me on the left with the black glasses and the rolled up sleeves. And this is West Side Story. And this was a profound moment in my life because that summer, Mr. Tischer and Modesto Youth Theater did West Side Story and then Music Man. And I was so inspired by West Side Story, how beautiful the music is, and how profound the story. And I got injured during the rehearsal of the Rumble, actually, and cracked a bone in the top of my foot. And so I wasn't able to dance in the production, which was really tragic for me at that time as a high school kid that was really into this. And I was on stage kind of hobbling around, but I couldn't really do it all the way. I didn't get canceled, but I didn't get to do the full thing. And then I was healthy for Music Man. And Music Man's a wonderful show, but compared to West Side Story with its tragic depth, Music Man felt like a puff piece for me at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of whetted my appetite for more profound and higher level kind of things. However, Mr. Tischer and Dennis Clark, Mr. Clark, who were the directors of Modesto Youth Theater, never cast me in a singing role, in a lead role of any kind other than a speaking role. So I did 14 shows through the years and never had a singing role. While all around me, all these other wonderful people, Robert Ulrich, Terry James, and people like that, got to do all the leading roles. And in retrospect, I can say quite deservedly so. I wasn't good enough. But when they did give me the role of Chief Sitting Bull in Annie Get Your Gun, Karen Lotko was the lead, the female lead, and Terry James is the male lead. They were fantastic. It's not a singing role, but I learned that I could project my voice, much to everyone's surprise.
Wow.
And so they gave me a scholarship at the end of that summer that I could only use for fine arts lessons. It was a big, generous $50. And even then, that wasn't that much. And just to use that $50, I took my first voice lessons. And that's how I got started. I wasn't interested in any of this. All those years, I said many a time that anyone who wanted to pursue a performing arts career was nuts. And I was right.
So when did you make this decision to go into performing instead of becoming, what did you say you wanted to be, a doctor or?
Yeah, doctor, teacher or something. Well, even though I had that in my mind, I couldn't quite persuade myself to apply to the types of universities that would have led me to that. It just didn't quite feel right, even though logically and my logical mind thought that's where I should go. But one day in the Modesto High School counseling office, I saw a funny poster for a place called World College West. And it looked intriguingly different. And I checked it out. And it turned out to be this new, essentially a startup college in Marin County that was founded by a man who had been originally from Modesto. His name was Dick Gray. And he was a minister and an educator and a high-level executive, all sorts of cool things. And he, with a whole bunch of other educators and people in like vice presidents from National B of A and all sorts of high-level executives, were trying to create a better way to do education. And not just have people go straight towards what would make them the most money, et cetera. So World College West did this by trying to make sure people were broadly educated and then knew about the world. They required a year spent in world study in a third world country. No going to the Vienna campus of Stanford and having beer with your English-speaking friends. So they had programs in places like Mexico and Ghana and Nepal and so forth. And that's how I wound up being in Mexico, away from my logical life and unexpectedly thinking about things that would have never come up. And one day, literally, I woke up and said, ding, I'm going to become an opera singer. And my family, when I told them, were like,
sure.
Okay, good. So, but it gave me direction.
What was there about opera that, do you think, what touched you about that? Were you aware of anything?
Yeah. I think it's just, I don't think opera is more special than other things, although I love it. Personally, I love musical theater more, actually. But opera is the hardest thing you can do, arguably, with your voice. So for people who want to just sit on the couch and have potato chips, I like doing that too. But like to not challenge themselves, opera would be bad. But for people who want to challenge themselves with their voices, opera is the thing. It's the hardest thing you can do. And I was not a natural singer, so everything I did with it was a huge challenge.
Okay. Okay.
So my dad in particular was certain that I had no potential to become an opera singer. And he let me know that that was the case. And we had wonderful long discussions about this. And progressively, as I proved that I could develop a voice that was worthwhile, he became my best fan and took pictures of me around the world. I'll show you some of those in a little while. Yeah. And somehow I was able to find the right teachers for my weird voice. And I've performed in 20 plus countries and 14 languages at many of the world's leading theaters, and I've had a ball.
Yeah. Wow.
Who knew? Not me.
I know. Jumping back, when you got your scholarship to invest in voice lessons, did you have any particular thoughts about that? Was this a reward for you, or were you thinking, oh, I really can't sing, or that's what they really thought, or something?
No, I thought, well, they never gave me a role, so I have to use this because this is the only thing they've ever given me.
Okay.
No, it wasn't quite that, but I would never have taken lessons without it. And my oldest sister, Christine Cragen, was beautiful and talented and had all sorts of great vocal potential. And she should have become an opera singer, unlike me. She was studying voice in Marin County with a retired famous opera singer who took me on and said, okay, I'll give you 5 lessons for your $50.
Whoa.
Even though her fee even then was a lot more than that. Her name was Verna Osborne, and she was had been a famous coloratura soprano, and had an incredible tragic thing happen to her. She was singing the role of Adele in the operetta Die Fledermaus. Coincidentally, the next opera that Opera Modesto will be putting on is Die Fledermaus. She was singing Adele in Die Fledermaus in New Orleans and had 4 tons of scenery land on her.
Oh my God.
And broke her back. And she was in traction for 2 years. So when I met her, she was ramrod straight. She eventually was able to go back to her performing career at San Francisco Opera and around the world. But it was one of those bizarre things that can happen anywhere in any way. And it was a horrible accident. And anyway, she was great. And I was a punk, and I called her Verna instead of Miss Osborne, like I should have. And she started me on the track that led me to becoming an international class opera singer.
There you go. All right. Well, here, let's get back to, this next picture here. See what happens.
So this next one is great because it was during the time when I started studying voice with Verna Osborne. Go ahead and get to that one of me with the breastplate.
There you go.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So that's the young Roy singing The Impossible Dream. And I know we use this phrase jokingly, but it takes a village, or it takes a community to give opportunities to young people, whether it's in the arts or in writing or in anything else. And so this was in Modesto. It was related to Modesto Youth Theater, but it was not Modesto Youth Theater. This was a show called A Showcase of Talent, and it was created by Robert Ulrich, the future casting director in Hollywood, and Melanie Wyatt, the future head of Yes Company. And they knew that I had started taking lessons, and they let me come back and do a solo in their show. It took place at the Modesto High School Auditorium, and I sang The Impossible Dream. And I did well enough, and it was my first solo, big moment in my life. That breastplate and helmet came from I'm sure Paul Tischer still has them, as a matter of fact, came from the Modesto Youth Theater stock. And it was a cool thing. And the Impossible Dream became my theme song, as it did for Buck Townsend later on. Anybody who saw our recent 40th anniversary gala of Opera Modesto Townsend Opera Players knows that we used The Impossible Dream as a connection to Buck and his founding of the opera company. So I got to play this role later on only once at Grand Rapids Opera. Go ahead to the next two photos, David, to connect those up. Yep. So that's me a few years later.
Mm.
This is actually one of the youngest Roy pictures that you'll see here. But good facial makeup and facial hair. And this was in Grand Rapids Opera in Michigan. I had a wonderful time. I loved the role. And I've never gotten to do it again, just the way it works out. This was
Really?
this was one of the photos taken of me by my father, as was the previous one. And he traveled various places around the world to take photos of me and Annalisa Winberg, my wife. And we have these incredible pictures from him. But one more
He
down,
was
David.
a very good photographer.
Yeah, he had a real special eye. He loved this one in particular.
Yes.
And
Nice.
Can see
somehow
why.
the flying hair and eyebrows and stuff.
Yeah. Huh.
So that was
That's
a cool
great.
thing, and I love that other young people, but people in Modesto, not just people outside of Modesto, helped make it possible for me. And like David has said, there was an incredible cauldron, David's word, of talent in those days, and there is today too. But we had a real group that came out of that kind of 20-year period of time, the first 20 years of Modesto Youth Theater, that have gone off and touched lives locally, regionally, and around the world as performers and organizers and teachers and talent agents. Terry James, for example, who I mentioned a minute ago, who was my nemesis at Modesto Youth Theater because neither of us were quite good enough to get in the dance group unless they didn't have enough guys. So it came down to either me or Terry and who could almost do a cartwheel and who couldn't quite do a cartwheel. And that was usually Terry. Then we grew up and he became the star and went off and had a fabulous national level musical theater leading man career, and then became the music director and then the executive director of Marriott Musical Theater Company in Marriott Theater in Chicago, one of the leading musical theater companies in the world. It's a very cool group.
Yeah. Well, this was a surprise, a nice surprise to see that, to see you as Don Quixote, especially as you say, since Buck Townsend took this on as, his alter ego, so to speak. I'm sorry you didn't get to play it more, but it makes
I proposed it to Paul Tischer a couple times. He said, "No, Buck owns that role here."
Yeah, but now his theater is your theater, so to speak. Our theater company is your theater company. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're not going to do that anytime soon. I'll let other people do it now.
Yeah,
but it's a wonderful role. I love it. Yeah.
So, might as well move on to, here's a picture.
Yeah, so this is the connector between me being an amateur singer and me being a professional singer. After I realized that I was actually pursuing this possibility, this crazy, impossible dream, I left World College West after 3.5 years, kind of a funny place to stop. And I felt that they had done what they were supposed to do, which was help me to a decision about my life, even if it was a weird one. And so I transferred to San Jose State University, where I entered the opera department there. The famous San Jose native opera singer Irene Dallas had created an opera program there, and San Jose Opera Theater, which is now Opera San Jose. And I got a start in kind of heading towards a professional career through experiences there, and also regionally in the Bay Area. I got to perform several times solo roles, finally, with West Bay Opera, which is now a regional professional opera. In this case, I'm performing in Johnny Skiki, the title role with West Bay Opera, and had a wonderful time. And that was one of my pre-professional roles. And then all the other photos we'll have on here are all from my professional career, various places around the world. At some point, I graduated from San Jose State, moved on to yet another teacher that was the one that within a few months made the connection hook that got my voice to the international level. And in 1987, I made my international debut in Italy, in Alessandria, in the title role of a new opera based on Cyrano de Bergerac, doing the
Ah,
role Cyrano with a now famous Italian composer. I don't have any pictures of that in this list,
uh-huh.
but that was really cool. Marco Tutino, whose opera The Two Sisters play was premiered at San Francisco Opera a few years ago with great success, and that was really fun. And then I got to perform all over Italy, Germany,
Yeah.
Switzerland, Austria, and around the world.
And this is just a maybe off the wall kind of question, but when you talk about your teacher and finding the hook or finding something in you that took your voice to another level, um, how would you describe that? How would you talk about that? Uh, a
Well,
lot of us
yeah.
like to sing, but there's obviously levels and uh,
Yeah, so for most people who become really good singers, they begin pretty good to begin with. They're the stars as teenagers that, in the choir, they're the ones that get the solos and so forth. And then they go to college and they get better and better and train up. I'm a bit different because no one believes this, but I really was not a good singer. I really was a bad singer and did not have a voice that anyone would have believed could become something. So I did work with Verna Osborne for a while, and I I tried out another teacher or two. I studied with another teacher at San Jose State, who was wonderful, but wasn't necessarily taking me towards a career. And then I found a teacher who's from Fresno, who's still my teacher when I still take lessons, and her name is Edna Garabedian. She had a wonderful international career of her own. And Annalisa, who I met at San Jose State, and I both studied with her, and she helped us to make that extra step. So in my case, I have a completely imbalanced musculature in my vocal apparatus. And I know we all kind of think that the voice just happens, but in fact, it happens in a sea of muscles. And if you're too imbalanced, you're too right-handed or left-handed, your vocal cords will not line up, and you won't be able to sing high notes, etc. And then it's a matter of learning to adjust those things. So if I don't train for a little while, my voice starts to get really raspy and doesn't have any of that resonance that people know from me. And that's my natural state. So
ah,
when I got to Edna, she understands things beyond the rest of us and really understands musculature. And she was able to take my messed up natural voice and get me to a position where I can project my voice in ways that I couldn't do without her help.
ah, yeah.
So anyone can take lessons and improve. In my case, I had enough desire and understanding of what she offered that I was able to kind of leap the impossible mountains.
Ah. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm very curious about that because, well, you were my vocal coach for a short period of time, and I remember shortly after meeting you, um, thinking, he really talks differently about this than anyone else that I've ever met before, and it kind of made sense to me in a weird way. And I was like, what is this all about? It's like he's talking mechanics in some ways. I shouldn't say mechanics.
Yeah.
It wasn't mechanical, but it was very organic kind of thing.
Well, it's a bit more mechanical and specific, my approach, just because it has to be. Without that, I can't sing.
Yeah.
Most voice teachers teach more generically. We do things like, say, use metaphors like visualize a beautiful sunrise. Oh,
Right.
when you do that, you lift and you smile and your voice gets placed in a nice way. So I'm more specific because that won't do anything to me. I'll just smile at the sunrise and not be able to sing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that digression because that's always been a curiosity of mine since I worked with you for a short time. Because it worked, by the way, with me too. So
Well, that's good.
Yeah, all these what do you call it? Ethereal pictures and things that other teachers had tried to invoke in me. It was like the same thing as with you. It's like, yeah, that's nice, but not sure it's doing anything to my voice. So
Well,
anyway,
that's the thing is, we are not one size fits all in this life, in this
yeah,
world, and as humans, and the same thing with the voice. So, voice teachers don't. No voice teacher, including me, is right for everyone.
right. Anyway, to move
Yeah,
on, you mentioned
yeah. Look at the next picture.
meeting
Look at that one.
Annalisa. There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. So Annalisa Winberg on the taller, pretty one, as opposed to the shorter, cute one. That's me in the middle.
Yeah.
This was at the Dallas Opera. I was playing the role of Alberich, the dwarf, in the Ring Cycle, which many of you know is based on the same root story as the Lord of the Rings. And I was playing the dwarf, kind of a bad guy, but a fun bad guy, on stage at the Dallas Opera. And Carolina, our daughter, was 5. And as you see, she dressed up to come see the opera. And she was very excited to come see Brunhilde, the goddess warrior who wakes up at the end of the opera and basically wins the opera. She's wonderful and beautiful and all that. Well, the opera of Siegfried, which is what we were doing, is very long. And by the time our daughter got to the end of the 5-hour opera, she was asleep.
Yeah.
And so when Brunhilde finally woke up on the rock, well, the daughter was asleep, and she was pretty upset when she couldn't be awakened and did awaken after the opera, and was not able to see Brunhilde during the show. In fact, she put on an amazing temper tantrum. It was very funny, amusing to see this beautiful little girl in the princess outfit. But Brunhilde, the artist, was great and gave her special time backstage and a special autograph poster. Anyway, Annalisa and I have been married since 1988, and we have both performed all around the world, sometimes together, sometimes separately. She's killed me viciously on stage in Tosca, and she's kicked me down the stairs in Austria in castle steps on the top of a mountain on 1,000-year-old castle ruins. She's done all sorts of terrible things to me. We've also had a lot of fun performing together.
Right. Well, it keeps your marriage balanced.
Indeed, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to keep it under control.
So I've had
Go
some
ahead.
really unique things here. So these are not in any particular order, but they're kind of cool to see. So this photo that's behind me and right here, this is a special one in my life that was in Palermo in Sicily, on the stage of one of the largest stages in the world, Teatro Massimo. And though you can't tell right off, I'm the bald guy, a little bit in the left of the image, right at the base of that pillar. And I was singing in Polish, but it's an opera about the King of Sicily from the 1100s, King Roger. Opera by fantastic Polish composer Szymanowski, and with a fantastic Polish cast, except for me. And that was the first time I ever got to sing in Polish. To pasterz podobno błęzi wśród wiosek naucza dziwnie i dziwnie pieśni śpiewa, etc. Anyway, that was really fun.
I take it that's a bald cap you're wearing?
Yes.
Oh, it's not your natural state.
After that, people thought I looked so good bald that I actually shaved my head for a couple of years, but they liked me better with the fake bald cap than they did with my natural bald.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah. I didn't recognize you at first because all of your earlier pictures, you have this full head of dark hair.
Yeah. What can I say? So early on in my career, this is one of my early operas at La Scala in Milano, one of the leading opera houses in the world. I was there for 7 years, and it was really fun. This was a world premiere called Blimunda, based on the award-winning novel from Portugal, Balthazar and Blimunda, and that was a really cool experience. It was just great to be at La Scala, one of the most kind of mythical story places in the world, and it was great. And so for anybody who's a stage person out there that has done performances in America, you know that stage right is artist's right, stage left is artist's left. In Germany, it's the opposite. It's from the director's point of view. So it's director's right and director's left because of, authority. But at La Scala, it's neither of those things. You go by what's on the right side of the theater and the left side of the theater. So there's to the what we would call stage right. There's a courtyard in the middle of La Scala's building, and they call it. So they say towards the courtyard, a corte. You don't say stage right or stage left. You say a corte. And to the left is Via Verdi, after the famous composer Verdi. So you say towards the road, a strada. So stage left is a strada, stage right is a corte.
Things to learn.
Yes.
Hey, you're quite handsome in this.
Thank you.
Was this a leading role?
Of course, it was a leading role. I only do leading roles.
You only do leading roles. No. Well, the reason I ask, come on, is that you're bass baritone basically, and the leading roles usually go to tenors. So
I was a leading baritone at that time.
Okay.
And so in opera, there's the leading. There are usually 4 lead roles, maybe 6, maybe 5. So there's the tenor and the soprano generally win. Yes, that's the leading tenor, leading soprano. They're the romantic leads. The baritone, leading baritone, which is what I was doing, is the funny guy, the bad guy, the one that makes things happen, like the Barber of Seville. Figaro, he's the one that makes things happen in the town. Or he's Scarpia in Tosca, the evil one, that kind of stuff. Or in Othello, it's Iago, the fun role. So that's the kind of stuff I did. So this was the leading baritone role.
Yeah. Very handsome. They should have picked you for the movies at this point.
Yep, they should have, yes. Yeah. Right. So there are 3 photos in this list, 2 of them together here, that are from the same opera. And they're fun to see one after another because they're the same opera. I had 4 different looks in this opera. It's called The Tales of Hoffmann. And the baritone or bass baritone role in this case is called The Four Villains. And the opera is based on the writing of E.T.A. Hoffmann, the famous poet. And it's all about the love stories of the tenor. And the baritone or bass baritone, his role is to be essentially the devil and come in and mess up the guy's love life. So there's this one. And in this particular production, they used horror movies as the basis. So this look was from Bride of Frankenstein. Go to the next one, David. And this one was another look from the same thing. This was based on the 70s Dracula. And I'm the tall one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And go down to the blue one further down the list, David, all the way down. You have to go down the whole set. No, blue one. Go down.
Oh, way down.
Yeah, the blue. There we go.
Okay.
And this is the 3rd one from that opera. And this, as movie aficionados will know, the look is based on Nosferatu.
Okay.
And then later on, of course, He Who Shall Not Be Named in the Harry Potter movies and other things were also based on that too. So those 3 looks were from the same opera. Lots of cool things along the way, just fun looks. One of the most fun operas I've ever done is the next, is the one there with that one. Yeah, that's Falstaff, based on the various sources of Sir John Falstaff from Shakespeare by the famous composer Giuseppe Verdi. It's one of the most beautiful, funny operas ever written. And I got to do the national premiere of this opera in 2 countries. This one was in Macau, which was Portuguese China. And then later I got to do it in Guatemala with Annalisa and also our daughter as an extra in it. That was really fun. So there are a lot of things. We don't need to go through all of these, David.
No, that's fine. What I was going to ask is, after looking through these, at some point you, I don't know if this was conscious or just happened, you kind of morphed from, as previous picture, leading man into character roles. This looks like more like a character role.
Well, so the baritone roles are the characters. So like Don Quixote is a good example of that, and this is a good example. These are all leading roles, either the lead or the second lead kind of thing, second male lead. And so all of the photos on here, I think with no exceptions, are starring roles.
Well, obviously, I wasn't trying to imply. I wasn't trying to imply otherwise. It was. But maybe I should have said romantic lead as opposed
No,
to
yeah,
character leads or
I
something.
only ever did one romantic lead, or only a few romantic leads when I was a tenor. All the baritone roles are the character lead or the
Okay,
bad guy lead.
or the bad guy
Yeah.
leads. Okay, yeah.
So in the
No
last few
insult
years,
intended. Yeah.
yeah, huh? Too late. In the last few years, Annalise and I've both shifted from performing as regularly to becoming in charge of Opera Modesto. However, if you go to the next picture, this was one of the last roles I've done internationally. This was the role of Macbeth of the Verdi Opera. This was in Panama in a really cool site-specific production with Opera Panama that we helped co-produce, and it was in the year of the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare and the 500th anniversary of Panama Viejo, the original city in the West. And we did this in the ruins of a cathedral there. It was really cool. And then just a month ago, we were performing these roles again in Nepal in a fusion of the Shakespeare play and the opera Macbeth. If you go down to the bottom, find that photo, David, with Annalise and me in Nepal just a couple weeks ago. There we go. So this was a fusion of Shakespeare Macbeth, or the Scottish play, and the Verdi opera Macbeth. In the opera world, we aren't worried about saying the name Macbeth. Oh, I shouldn't say that. But in the theater world, they're worried about it. In the opera world, there's a bad luck opera that's called the La Forza del Destino, Fourth of Destiny. And a lot of bad things have happened in that, but nobody's worried about Macbeth, the opera, like they are in the theater world. So we just did this great fusion in Nepal, and now we're back in Modesto and working on Opera Modesto.
Wonderful. So any of these others we should they're just
Yeah,
interesting
the guy with the
pictures.
horns.
The guy with the
horns.
horn. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the most unique of all of my opera experiences. I was asked by the National Theater of Albania to play the Albanian national hero, a guy named Skanderbeg or Skunderbu, who was one of the great world's diplomatic and military heroes from the 15th century. He and his Albanian army of just a few thousand held back the hordes from invading Western Europe in that time, and the Pope of the Catholic Church gave him the real version of that helmet, fake helmet I'm wearing, and you can go into a museum in Vienna and see his sword and his helmet made of a goat's skull and the gold and silver helmet made by the Pope of the Catholic Church, and it says on it, "Athlete Christian," the athlete of Christendom, or the savior of Christianity. And so I played Skanderbeg in the 100th anniversary celebration of independence for the country of Albania, which is a very bizarre thing to do. It's like someone from, I don't know, Germany playing George Washington in our 300th anniversary of America. And I think I'm still the only non-Albanian to sing in Albanian on the stage of the Albanian National Theater. And I had to learn how to sing it perfectly. It was really cool. We did it there. It was internationally televised. We did it on the Macedonian National Theater stage too. And I was the only non-Albanian in the Albanian World Diaspora concert from Geneva. It was really an amazing experience. One of those photos somewhere in there, David, there's a full stage look from that production with me as Skanderbeg. That's really beautiful. There it is, right above the blue one. Yeah, so there you go. That's me as Skanderbeg with a full Albanian cast of dancers and singers and a projection of the beautiful mountains of Albania. It was quite an experience.
Yeah. Well,
what is the process learning a language like Albanian that you're not typically singing in?
Yeah, so I thought I'd learn to speak it, but I gave that up very quickly. But I've sung in, I think, 14 languages. So I'm used to learning to place languages so that they sound without an accent. But I had to find people who could help me. So I was previously performing in Albania. I got someone to to make a recording of all of the words. I started working with, and then I found in Hollywood 2 Albanian Hollywood actresses, and one of them, Greta Zenelai, came up and met me in Monterey at the golf course there, and sat, and we worked through all of the words and the accent and the pronunciation for hours, and that gave me the basis for going back and doing it. It wasn't an obvious thing to Albanians that they should have an American playing their national hero, and in fact, they hadn't announced it until I arrived for the first rehearsal and walked into the chorus room and was introduced by the head of the opera house as the person who was singing Skanderbeg. No one in the opera house knew, and they were shocked, stunned, appalled, even though they knew me and liked me, until I started singing. And then they thought my Albanian was better than theirs because it was ancient Albanian, kind of like doing Old English. It was hard for everyone.
Wow.
So
it was really cool.
As my recollection is that this role in which you performed led to another interesting story where they asked you back to direct an opera.
So I didn't direct it, but I co-produced. So the director of the opera house there. So you have to know that in Albanian, they had been closed from the rest of Europe for 50 years after World War I, basically. And certainly after World War II. And so for 45, 50 years in the 90s, there had been a closed society, and all music performed in Albania had to be done by Albanian composers. This is a tiny country. I mean, it's 10 million people. It's nothing compared to other places. I think it's 10 million people around the world, probably only half that in Albania. Anyway, in 92, when the wall fell and Glasnost and all that happened, Albania also opened up. And the wonderful man who was running the opera company wanted to bring all the other composers and work symphonic and opera to the Albanian people. And so he'd done a lot of that with Verdi and Puccini and Bach and Beethoven and stuff, but he wanted to do an opera by Richard Wagner. And Wagner did the big operas like the Ring Cycle, and they're just really hard to do, and they're special and different. And I had become a specialist in Wagner around the world. And so he asked me if I would help find the people to help train the Albanians and the foreigners, have people come in to help make it happen. And I did. I helped raise money as well. And I starred in the opera, which was Tannhäuser, leading tenor Wagner role. Annalisa was also in it. And this was in 2013, maybe. And our daughter Carolina, who was a high school senior at that time, I wasn't able to find someone in Albania to sing the small role of the shepherd boy, which is done by a young soprano. And so we wound up casting our daughter as a high school senior as the young shepherd boy. And so she, as a 17, 16-year-old, whatever it was, made her international opera debut on the international stage in Albania, singing in German in the national premiere of any opera by Wagner. And that was pretty cool. And then she got sick. Poor thing. She got really sick. But there was no one to replace her. And I'm sure this has never happened before, that the leading man and leading lady not only had the same dressing room, in other words, my wife and me, but they allowed this really sick bit part player to be in their dressing room too. So Carolina had a fever of well over 100 degrees. She would go out on stage and sing beautifully and come back to the dressing room and pass out, fall asleep, because she was so sick. Wow. But that was her best performance.
As it often is. So you mentioned something. Well, I want to get to this. We have lots of things to talk about, but I want to get to this one. Because, well, to me, this is the only picture that I've seen here. But at some point, you decided to retrain yourself as a tenor. And I found that very interesting. One, that you can do that, or that people can do that. And also, what prompted you to do that?
So vocal categories are less rigidly defined than we tend to think they are. And also, within the opera vocal categories, there are a lot of gradations of types. So it's not just a soprano. There are many different types of sopranos that do different things. Some of them have tiny voices and can go up high. Some have big honker voices. Some of them are more romantic and warm sounding. Well, I was a leading baritone. I became a dramatic baritone and then a Helden baritone. A Helden baritone is specializing in Wagner. I also sang some bass baritone roles. And by the time I got to the Metropolitan Opera, if you go to, I think, the last picture down there, the one with the hat with the frills, David, that was the Metropolitan Opera with War and Peace. And I was, yeah, there we go. I was pretty bored by then because I had gone as far as I was going to go, and I needed a new Mount Everest because I was pretty settled. I'd done a lot of leading roles, a lot of places, and it was great, but I was bored. So I was working on my voice and developing the top notes because I didn't think they were good enough. And I was in the green room backstage at the Met vocalizing, and this tenor walked through to use the restroom of the green room. And he said, "Oh, hi, Roy. How you doing?" I said, "Oh, fine, fine." He says, "Who was that in here vocalizing a few minutes ago?" I said, "Oh, that was me." He said, "No, no, no, no. No, I was in the stairwell and I heard a dramatic tenor singing a high B flat or something. And that's not you because you're more like a bass baritone." I said, "No, no, no, that's me. And I'm just working on my high notes." He said, "Are you sure you're not a tenor?" And I was like, "No." So I liked the idea of the challenge. I didn't care about being a tenor per se, and the roles never interested me like the baritone roles, but I liked the challenge. So I worked on it for a while, and I called up my New York agent, Peter Ransman, said, "Peter, guess what?" He said, "I know what it is. You're going to become a tenor." I said, "Yeah."
Wow.
So, okay,
Yeah.
great. So then I called up my voice teacher, Edna, and she said, "Okay, let's get to work." And so we changed my voice to tenor. It took a while. I sang as an international tenor for 12 years. Had a lot of fun. And then I got tired of that and switched back to baritone. I've also sung buffo basso, and I switched back to Verdi baritone and whatever. So I'm the unusual one that can switch around and manipulate my voice. And the reason is because I manipulated my voice to become a singer to begin with. So I'm not afraid to play around with my voice, and I've had a lot of fun with it.
Okay.
So back to that picture you were asking about, the one with the sword. That was the leading man of Siegfried before I had played the dwarf in one of those operas. But this is Siegfried, who is the hero. He gets the girl. He forges the sword and all that kind of stuff. But, leading romantic roles are kind of dull. They just get the girl and, they stand there and go, "Oh."
Well,
I'd
when you're younger, that's a big deal. Yeah.
I'd rather, go out and attack the leading man. That's much more fun than being the romantic hero.
Okay. Well, there's some things I want to get to here before we end. So I'm going to take you down to kind of the end here. So we'll just leave this one up while we're talking. What brought you back to Modesto and taking over Opera Modesto? Because that's another major step in your career, at least from my point of view.
We never really left Modesto. Modesto was our base for a lot of our careers, especially after Carolyn was born. And we had been friends with Buck Townsend and a lot of people involved with the company. And my mother, Dottie Stevens, was a volunteer with Townsend Opera Players from the very beginning. So in 2017, well, I have to say that when Buck was dying, he did a deathbed request of me that I take over Townsend Opera. But I was very much in the middle of my career, and that was the wrong time for me, and it didn't work out, fortunately. But in 2017, the company was in trouble, as happens to arts companies. You go through cycles. And Carl Bengston, who is on the board, came to me and asked just for help because there was no general director at the moment. And so I wound up volunteering myself and my wife, without asking her, to work pro bono for a while to help Townsend Opera to survive difficult times. And we were able to bring it back to life. And then after doing that for 8 months, we got used to having me around and in charge, and I kind of got stuck, and they made me an offer that I accepted. And so it was also time. we'd been professionals around the world since 1987, and you get tired of doing auditions and stuff. And we had already changed the careers to being more organizationally minded and doing major productions like the ones in Panama and Albania, where we helped organize them. So I was kind of already set up to organize. And so here I am. It wasn't what I intended, but it was kind of fate that was coming for me. And we've done very well, fortunately. And I have to say that taking over a company when it's on its hard times is much better than taking over a company when it's at its peak.
Why? How so?
Well, because if you help it to survive when it's about to die, then you're already doing a good job and everybody likes you. And if you're able to then have it come back to life and expand and grow and make people happy, it's successful. Taking over an opera company or any company that's doing its best work and most success ever, you can only mess it up, basically. So we've been fortunate to be successful and bring it back to life and bringing along the community and doing cool things.
Okay. Well, jumping around, this is, every once in a while you do perform, and here you are in one of your roles for Modesto, for Opera Modesto.
Rigoletto, which is the leading role and the title role, David.
Yes, I truly, you're going to not let me forget this forever. So here's another one from Rigoletto.
From Rigoletto,
yeah. We don't have time to talk about that. I was going to ask you about why somebody always has to die in opera, but always seems
more fun.
Yeah. And here's another one of the roles that you just had so much fun with here in Modesto.
And Cinderella, instead of in the opera Cinderella, there's not a ugly stepmother, mean stepmother. There's a mean stepfather who's a comic character. And that's really fun.
Okay, so in the few minutes we have left, since you've come back to Opera Modesto, you've brought something to our community that we haven't seen before in opera. For example, putting a horse on the stage at the Gallo Center.
Not just a horse, but an Azorean Portuguese bullfighting horse with an amazing bullfighting rider.
Yes.
And it was really cool collaborating with the Azorean bullfighting community.
Yeah.
Bloodless bullfighting community.
Yeah. And as you said, first time and maybe the only time this is going to happen.
Yeah, I doubt if they'll let another horse on stage anytime soon.
Yeah. And then here's another innovation you brought, unintentional.
Pandemic allowed us to do things we wouldn't have done, and that included making this amazing world premiere youth opera movie, The Race. It's a mashup of 5 Aesop's fables. It's now available to stream with English subtitles plus 15 other languages of subtitles, accompanied with a graphic novel in the same languages. It's going to be shown soon on national TV in Nepal, in English and Nepali, and they're going to publish the novel there. We hope that will be the beginning of using it as a teaching device for learning English and also introducing to opera and American culture and teenagers. So that's 19 wonderful youth performers from the Central Valley doing something quite remarkable. This movie has won over 80 International Film Festival awards, and we're very proud of it.
Yes, amazing. And I thank you for letting me shoot the pictures for it. I mean, it was an
nice
amazing
picture, David.
Yeah. And then here's another, innovation in a way that you've brought to our community.
This is our Story into Song Literacy Initiative we do every winter and every January at the State Theater. This is literally something unique in the United States and world. We don't know of any other place doing it. We do an opera based on books or literature that's being read in schools so that teachers and literacy advocates can have kids and adults read the book and then come to the theater and have it exploded into their imagination. This was based on Don Quixote, paired with the one based on Bless Me Ultima. This coming year in January, we are doing Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Fallen Giant. It's a mashup of Jack and the Beanstalk with Sherlock Holmes, world premiere. We're going to do it at the State Theater, also at Denier Gaslight Theater, Newman Westside, and Tracy Grand, and perhaps some other theaters, and have thousands of students who are reading these books come and enjoy having theater explode their reading.
Wow, that's so great.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, wow. An amazing
life.
Yeah, what an adventure. Yeah.
It's been fun, and it continues on. I'm
And
glad
it
to say.
does. It does.
This thing in Nepal, I was named the Fulbright specialist in Nepal, and that was something never expected to happen as well. A
Yeah.
very cool moment to touch lives in another country.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't make that more prominent here, but that was one of my big questions too, which is, what's that all about? How do you get to be a Fulbright specialist? That's
No idea.
no idea.
It just happened.
Yeah.
I was nominated by the company in Nepal through the U.S. Embassy, and then I had to go through the process. But it was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that is lovely. Congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, yeah, as I understand it, this is not just a one-time thing, but it's a several-year thing that you may be called upon again or something.
Yeah, I'm part of the Fulbright Specialist candidate pool for all U.S. embassies around the world. If they have a need that I could fill, then I could conceivably be selected to do so.
Wow.
Hmm.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us
you.
today. I mean, it's been wonderful. There's so many stories. I learned so much. So, but it's time to say goodbye. So I guess that's what we'll do here. So,
Well, my pleasure, and
Thank
thank
you,
you for
Roy.
inviting me. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, David.
It was
okay.
delightful. Thank you.